Hi there and welcome to this second video in my CodeIgniter tutorial series. In this video I'm going to take you through using the CodeIgniter template library. That's a library that's built in to CodeIgniter. All we need to do is load it into our controller and then use the methods that are available to us from the library to, in this particular instance, create a simple template. So what do we mean by that? Well, first of all, sections like the page title that we see here, sections such as this introduction, and sections that would typically be in a loop, perhaps coming from a database like this section here, all can benefit from a standardized layout. Now, I do quite a bit of work with Ruby on Rails, and one of the things I really like about it is the way that you can have a particular layout set for a resource within the application. We can kind of emulate that with CodeIgniter's template library by creating a template for different sections of the site. So what I've done is I've created a very simple layout here, and we're going to see now how we can in fact make these sections operate inside a template. So let's look at the code for the template first of all. All I've done inside the views folder is created a template subdirectory, and then I've created a file called main template. This is the code for it. Most of this is bog standard HTML with links to Google Fonts for the logo section, and then I've linked in a style sheet. You may remember actually from the first video, if you've watched that one, that I referred to the URL helper class being auto-loaded. Here's one of the reasons why. Base URL is a function inside that helper class to allow me to refer to the actual base URL of the site. What that means is that I haven't got to go around and update all of the links when I push this to a live server. Base URL will work in relation to, if we look in config, this base URL option here. So it's just an easy way to make sure that your links to various resources are always going to work. Anyway, moving on. So where the template library is concerned, or the parser, CodeIgniter looks for sections such as these in the curly braces, and what it does is, not too surprisingly, I suppose you can work it out if you're used to working with template libraries, it'll replace each of these with content that we provide, typically from either variables that we've set in the controller method or in fact from the database. I'm going to use a simple array in this video example because I haven't demonstrated using databases with CodeIgniter yet, but you'll get the idea. So let's look at the controller. So we can see here that I've created an array element title. That'll be used to replace the title option here. Then I've got a page heading array element. That'll be used to replace the page heading section here. Then I've got an array element called intro. The idea of that is an introductory paragraph to the page. That'll replace the intro variable you see there. And then I've got a section called articles. This is a little different. What articles does is, and I've created a simple array here because, as I said earlier, we're not using a database yet, but the idea is that we've got various elements, array elements, that we can replace in the same way that we do with these more static elements. Let's just go back to the template and have a look how it works. So you see that we've got an opening articles there and a closing articles there, and contained inside it we've got an article title and an article blurb. So when we look at this array, you can see what's happening here is I'm building up an array of articles, and each one represents what we see that's actually produced at runtime or transferred in to replace that variable, if you like, at runtime. So when we look back in the browser, you can see that's exactly what's happening here. Now that's a pretty handy feature of this particular library, because what it means is that when we start working with the database, instead of doing this kind of thing, we can actually just get the values directly from our database tables via a query, pass them into this particular array option that we have, or this array variable I should say that we have here, so that when the parser does its work here, what's passed in is the results of the query coming back from the database. So this part here will actually be unnecessary. But it works, it serves a purpose, you can see what's happening. To work with the template library, it's actually called the parser library, we load it. I've adjusted the welcome controller to use a more standard PHP 5.3 type syntax. So I've got a constructor method. I'm loading or connecting to the parent class, if you will, of the controller, CI controller class, and I'm simply loading the parser library in the constructor to make it available to the whole class. If I was only going to use this particular template in, let's say, the index method that I have here, then there would be no point really loading it in the constructor. I could just load it in the method. But generally speaking, for me, if I'm going to use a resource, I prefer to load it in the constructor if I can, because then I know I can just work with it in all the methods in this particular controller class. So that's really all there is to it. We make this one single call here. Obviously it gathers up all the variables in the data array, passes them through to the view, because essentially that's what main template is. It's still a view, and then it renders out. So we've got our heading section here, which I've just added PHP date. We've got the intro section, and then we've got the loop that runs through the array of articles. And it's really that simple. There are some gotchas to be aware of. This particular template, for example, if I wanted to click a link to go through and read this article, or allow users to do that, this particular template isn't going to be of any use for that purpose. I'd need to create another template really to make the layout slightly different, so that instead of having all this, what we could have is just perhaps one variable saying content, so that I could load the content of the article into the main content area on the layout, that being this section here. So I would need another template. We do have another option. Ellis Lab, who create CodeIgniter, and the community of people that have worked on the project, they don't try and kid you on that this template library is a massively powerful library. It's a very simple, slick, quick template library. It's not meant to be the all singing, all dancing stuff that you can get out on the web, other open source projects. It's meant to be quick and easy to use and to implement, and I think you can see from this code that it is. Do bear in mind that this array that I've created here wouldn't be necessary once we connect to a database, because instead we just retrieve the articles from the database. So that would be tidied up, and things like intro for a particular page, either we could just write them in the page itself, or else we could retrieve that kind of information from the database as well. I'm saying that because I don't like big messy controllers. I prefer as much code as possible to be elsewhere within the application code, rather than having a big long detailed controller like this. Well, it's not that long, but it's messy. This is just for example purposes, and I will make this available on the GitHub. Okay, I think that just about completes the template library, or the parser library for CodeIgniter. See you in the next video.